Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vedya Dravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So last week we finished the first chapter, the Yoga of Arjuna, grief. And to review where we are, again, we want to understand that Kurukshetra, the battlefield, is mystic symbolism. It has to do with the battle that goes on within each of our hearts. We're not concerned whether or not there was a historical battle. There might have been, there might have not been. We leave that to the historians. For you and me, what's the meaning for us in our lives? So the two armies are arrayed, facing each other. They've been blowing their conches and beating their drums. And Arjuna, the commander-in-chief of the Pandava forces, says to his charioteer, Lord Krishna, take me out between the armies. He's acting as is his nature, man of action, general. And Krishna says, look at these armies now arrayed. Pay attention to what is going on. Of course, the deeper meaning is we pay attention to our own interior reactivity. Our attachments, our aversions, our ideas of self as they come up. And Arjuna's response is a freak out. And being totally identified with his ego, he is all concerned with I-ness and minus. I am afraid I'm going to lose the battle. First of all, their army's bigger. But there are my cousins over there, and my grandfather, and my archery teacher, Bhishma and Drona. I don't want to do that. These are people I used to love and revere. And he starts to get frightened and confused. And then, as most of us do in situations like that, when we want to withdraw from an uncomfortable situation, we come up with rationalizations. So he puts forward all this rationale as to why it's a bad thing to do to have this battle. It's going to destroy the family. If the family gets destroyed, we're going to have the admixture of castes. Women will be corrupted. then the rites that go on in the home are going to get corrupted, and the ancestors won't get their pinda, their rice balls. So he's started with a larger frame. What is the good of the society? As a Kshatriya, his duty is to fight for justice, establish righteousness, fight against iniquity. And he's gotten very little in his viewpoint. All about I-ness and minus. And even though he's got all these rationales, the body does not lie. He's got horriculation, meaning his hair stands on end. He's trembling. His face turns all red. His mouth gets dry. His knees get weak. And he sits down in the bottom of the chariot and says, I will not fight. So that's where we left everybody. So let's start with chapter 2, the first verse, please, Deepa.
Give me a second so I can present. Okay. Sanjay Vacha Tam Tatha Kripaya Vishta Mashrupurna Kulikshanam Vishidantamidam Vakya Muvacha Madhusudanaha. Sanjaya said, to him who was thus overcome with pity and despondency, with eyes full of tears and agitated, Madhusudana spoke these words.
So, Arjuna is overcome with feeling. Kripa is actually the word that's used here, which we usually mean of as compassion or pity, feeling. We aren't quite sure who he's feeling sorry for, himself or the Kauravas. We're not clear on that. But there he is, kind of weeping at the bottom of the chariot. And so Krishna then replies. Now, what's so interesting, normally we think of the guru going, there. I'm going to make you feel better. But let's see what Krishna actually says. Going on.
Shri Bhagwan Vacha Kutastva Kashamal Midam Vishame Samupasthitam Anar Yajushtamaswargyam Tirkara Marjuna. The Blessed Lord said, whence in this perilous condition come upon thee, this dejection, un-Aryan-like, heaven excluding, disgraceful, O Arjuna?
Is this the one, I couldn't hear your Sanskrit. Did he say Klybium or is that in the next one? I think that's in 3, isn't it?
Yeah, there's no Klybium here.
Yeah. So he's saying, what's going on with you, dude? This is not like you. This is not what your duty is. Now, he knows Arjuna's ego. His ego is, I'm a warrior, I'm a winner, I like to be in charge. So he says, this is un-Aryan-like, meaning it's not noble. This is not a racist epithet. You know, you're not being courageous. You're not engaging in your duty. Is this battlefield cowardice I see in you? And what does that do? That pokes Arjuna. Gets him where his ego is identified. Now, I like to tell a funny story. So there was a time when Swamiji was giving a camp, and it was at a university campus. And the woman who had done most of the organizing for it asked him whether or not he was going to stay in their home or he wanted to stay on campus, close to where the camp was going to take place. Just wait till this car goes by. Oh, I hope they will. There they go. Okay. So, he, knowing that she had an attachment, said, oh, I guess I'll stay with you. And she gets all happy. And then he says, yes, but it would be much better if I stayed closer to where the camp is. And then she got dejected. And he says, yes, but I know that you want me to stay with you, so I'll stay with you. And then she gets all happy. And then he says, yes, but I should be available to the people who are there at the camp. And she gets dejected. So he went back and forth with this, poking at her, until she could see, ah, I'm attached. I'm identified. And she was a mature yogi. Finally, she got it, and she just dropped it. She went to that place where she didn't care. He'll either stay with us or he won't. Whatever you want, Swamiji. Then he said, okay, I'll stay with you. But frequently the Guru will do that. Poke at us. Hit us where our ego is. Now, I don't do that too much with students. Personally, I think life does a pretty good job of it without my help. But the point is for us to be aware that if I'm disturbed, if life is poking at my ego, to pay attention. How do I know if life is poking at my ego? If I'm disturbed. If I'm disturbed, no matter the cause, I'm the one with the attachment. I'm the one with the expectation. I'm the one with the identification. That is axiomatic. So here Arjuna is sitting there at the bottom of the chariot. I've got this all rationalized. And Krishna goes, poke. Next one, please.
Klebhyam masdama partha netatva yupapadyate shudram hridaya dorlabhyam tyaktotishta param tapa. Yield not to impotence, O Partha, it does not befit thee. Cast off this mean weakness of heart. Stand up, O Parantapa, O scorcher of foes.
So this word kleibium is really an interesting one. I can't recall any place else in scripture that I've heard this term used. So it means neutered, literally. Klebya is also the word we use when we're talking about grammar of masculine, feminine, and neuter gender. So he's really saying, grow a pair of balls. That's literally what he's saying. So, how did Swamiji translate it? Unmanly?
It's an interesting definition. It says the word klebya means the mental attitude of one who is neither masculine enough to feel a passionate courage and daring, nor womanly enough to feel the soft emotions of hesitation and despair.
Yeah. Don't be a wimp. Don't be a wuss. Don't be neuter. So that's what it means. Klebya. So again, this guy thinks that, I'm a dude. I'm a proud boy. And now Krishna is saying, you're acting as if you've been gelded. That's what you're acting like. That's what you're acting like. And so this further embarrasses and triggers Arjuna. Now, if he were truly a mendicant and that was his swadharma, Krishna could say all these things and he would say, but I have left the world. I'm off to become a sannyasi. But Arjuna is really there, identified. His nature, his prakriti, his swadharma is to be a soldier. So he finds all this really embarrassing. Now, what else do people who are kshatriyas as temperament want? They're ambitious. They like wealth. They like power. They like glory. There's nothing wrong with that if that's your nature. What you do is dedicate it to something larger than your own ego. That's not where Arjuna is right now. So let's go on and see what happens.
Arjuna vacha katham bhishmamaham samkhe dronam cha madhusudana ishubhi
I
pratiyot.
can't hear you, sweetheart. A little louder.
Sorry. Ishubhi pratiyotsyami pujar harvari sudana. Arjuna said, how, O Madhusudana, shall I in battle fight with arrows against Bhishma and Drona, who are fit to be worshipped, O destroyer of enemies?
So again, he's getting closer to telling the truth. These are fit to be worshipped. He's not yet really copping to the fact, yeah, but what if they kill me? How do I deal with the fact that I'm required to go against my egoistic likes and dislikes in order to do the right thing? Now, on just a practical scale, we're pretty lucky in the US in that now we have a volunteer active duty military. Back when I was a young man, we had the draft. And probably the hardest thing any officer ever has to do is to send young men and women into harm's way with the sure knowledge that some of them will not come back. And yet, you have to do it. That's your duty. By the time you're on the battlefield, it's a little late to say you're a pacifist, because you can't handle what your job requires. And this, again, is a metaphor for all of us. Have you ever been asked to do a task at work or in a relationship? Let me see if I can give you an example. So you're married, and in your marriage, you take a vow to be with that person till death do you part, through sickness and in health, through good times and bad. And you find your spouse cheated on you. What do?
Kill him?
Do you?
No, I'm just kidding. No.
That's what you may want to do. But what do you do?
Forgive him?
Well, you get to figure that one out. But what I'm saying is, all of us face these battles. What is right compared to what does my ego say I want to do? I'm not going to tell you what's right. I don't know. I'm not that smart. But these situations don't just happen on a battlefield. And they don't just happen thousands of years ago. Here's another one. You have a child who's a drug addict, and you've sent them to rehab more than once, probably. And there they are out on the streets, and they're homeless, and they're doing drugs, and they call you up. I have no money, I have no food, I have no place to stay, I have nothing to eat. Save me, mommy, or save me, daddy. What do you do? These are not unrealistic issues. Many of us have faced them. So this is the Battle of Kurukshetra. Let's see. Any thoughts on this? All right. Next one, Deepa.
Sure. This one's a slightly longer verse, different meter, I think, so I'll try my best. Guruna hatva hi mahanubhavan shreyo bhoktum bhekshamapi haloke hatvartha kamamstu guruni haiva punjiya bhogan rudhira pragdidhana. Better indeed in this world is to eat even the bread of beggary than to slay the most noble of teachers. But if I kill them, even in this world, all my enjoyments of wealth and desires will be stained with blood.
So one of the things to know from the literary style, when Vyasa, our poet, uses this double meter, and you did a very good job with it, by the way, it's almost always when Arjuna gets emotionally excited. So it's a way in which Vyasa conveys intense emotion. So let's, again, bring it forward to a worldly example. So you're a parent with the drug addict child. Let's use a different one. You've got, let's say, a drunken husband. And he keeps saying, forgive me one more time. I won't ever do it again. What do you do? And your friends who maybe have some wisdom say, you can find peace of mind, quit rescuing your husband. He won't get well until he takes responsibility for his actions. He's got to experience the consequences. So then the next day, the boss calls up and says, your husband didn't show up to work today. Is he okay? And your tendency is to want to lie, to protect your husband. Do you compromise your own integrity? Or do you tell the truth? Very interesting thing. So here, Arjuna has completely lost sight of the larger picture. Better for me to go off and be in beggary than to kill these people. Let me give you a real live example. So I was listening to the president today. He had a video out. He says, now I finally understand COVID. It's not just book learning. And I'm going to tell you all about it soon. I really understand it now. Like 209,000 people haven't already died, and he's just now understanding it? Again, Arjuna's caught up in self. Now, chances are, if he decided to have this false renunciation of giving up the kingdom, giving it to the Kauravas, you think he'd really be able to let go? There's a very famous story from Aesop's Fables about a fox who's walking down a path and he sees some low-hanging grapes from a grapevine. And he thinks, oh, those look so delicious. They're so ripe. If I can just grab them, they'll fall right off. And he jumps up and tries to get the grapes and he can't quite reach them. And he jumps again and he jumps again. Finally, he realizes he cannot reach the grapes. So he goes down the path and says, well, they were probably sour anyway. That's where we get the expression sour grapes. That's also what I would call false renunciation, where we come up with a good motive to hide a negative motive behind it, to rationalize our fear, our hurt feelings, our egoism, etc. So here he says, better I should go live in beggary than fight the Kauravas. Going on, next one.
This is also a long one.
What number are we on now?
6.
6, all right.
न चैत द्विद्मा कतरन्नो गरियो यद्वा जयेम यदि वा न जयेयु यानेव हत्वा न जिजीविषामः ते वस्थिता प्रमुखे धार्तराष्ट्रा. I can scarcely say which will be better, that we should conquer them or that they should conquer us. Even the sons of Dhritarashtra, after slaying whom we do not wish to live, stand facing us.
So if I kill them and I'm going to feel bad and regretful about having done so, that it's better that they should kill us rather than me killing them. He's lost sight completely of what his duty is. And he's only concerned about his own feelings. Going on.
Verse 7. Karpanya dosho pahat swabhavaha pritchami tvam dharma samudha chetaha yachreyasyanishchitam bruhi tanme shishyaste ham shadhi mam tvam prapannam. My heart is overpowered by the taint of pity. My mind is confused as to duty. I ask thee, tell me decisively what is good for me. I am thy disciple. Instruct me, who has taken refuge in thee.
So here he is suffering. And now he's done the one intelligent thing that the ego is capable of doing. And this is to turn toward God, toward the Guru, and surrender. In our Hindu tradition, something that's very normal for us, we're raised doing it as kids, is to namaskar to our parents, to a teacher, to the guru. You may just touch the teacher's feet. If you feel very emotional, you may do a full prostration. Westerners have a hard time with this. I'm not bowing down to anybody kind of thing. And what we need to do is to learn to surrender. There are intimations of it in Western culture. So, for example, in the Catholic Church, there are times when we have kneeling as a prayer posture. And that's for us to be in a posture of surrender. It's like knowledge, like water, flows from a higher level to a lower. And if we're proud, we're not teachable. So the one intelligent thing that the ego can do is turn and surrender. We have a parallel in the Christian tradition for those of us who comes from that. You'll frequently hear the word repent, repensare, to rethink. But the Greek word from which it, yes, it is Greek. Metanoia is the Greek word that's translated as repentance, which literally means to turn around and go the other direction. So our ego is constantly trying to reinforce itself, trying to extrovert into the world, people, places, things, and conditions. And we want to turn and surrender. So here Arjuna, as our spiritual every person, has done the first really intelligent thing. I'm confused as to my duty. I have doubt. I'm going to set aside my rationale. And I'm going to surrender. Was that number 7 or number 8, Deepa?
That was 7.
Number
Also,
8.
just checking in. It looks like Sheila's mom is back. If she wants to chant, I'm happy
Just
to.
continue. And unless she would like to chant, would you like to chant?
Okay, yeah, she would like to. Thank
All
you.
right. So we're now on number 8. Is that correct?
Yes.
Number 8, please.
Nahi prapashyami mamapa nudyat yasho kamusho na midrayanam avapya bhuma vasa patnamutam rajyam suranamapi jadhipatyam. I do not see that I would...
Let Deepa do the English because I can hear it a little better.
Okay. Go ahead.
Deepa, the English?
Yes. Sorry, I was unmuting myself. I do not see that it would remove this sorrow that burns up my senses, even if I should attain prosperous and unrivaled dominion on earth, or even lordship over the gods.
So here is briefly indicated one of the most important preconditions to successful sadhana. And that is what we call mature vairagya. We have to see that what's going to solve my problem is God, not something in the world. The world can only deliver temporary, finite solutions. And once we see that, I like to say, I don't care what your problem is. The answer is God. Too frequent we try manipulating the world. More, better, different, money, power, prestige, people, places, things. And they never work completely. Now, try a spiritual solution. Solve the spiritual malady and see what happens. Now, here we have a shift. Lord Krishna steps in here. Go ahead.
Mom.
Sanjaya uvacha eva mukta hishikesham Vodakesha parantapa na yotsa iti govinda muktva drushni babhuvaha. Having spoken thus to Rishikesha, Godakesha, the destroyer of folks, he said to Govinda, I will not fight and become silent. And he became silent.
So here, finally, Arjuna quits his rationalizations, quits trying to preach at Lord Krishna, and he gets quiet. Now, there's huge implication here. In the Hebrew scriptures, the prophet Isaiah, I think it's Isaiah, anyway, I can't remember which prophet it is, refers to the voice of the infinite as the still small voice that's within our hearts. We can call it our intuition, the deep whisperings of the divine. It is different than the loud trumpets of raga and dvesha. Raga, I must have it this way. Dvesha, aversion, I will never do that. We have to make sure we do not confuse the childish, indulgent tendency of the mind with that deep intuition. So what we have to do is learn to quiet those loud, screaming trumpets. And we do this through silence. This is the essence of meditation. Just don't do something. Sit there. All those voices come up. I want, I hate, I want, I hate. Just let them go. Let them go, let them go. And if we don't feed them with our attention, eventually they start to quieten down. They become silent. Then the Lord can speak to us. Deep in our hearts, a sense of knowing. So Krishna has turned towards the Lord, and now he's become silent. Is this number 10 now?
Coming up.
Yeah.
Number 10.
Rishikesha prahasanniva bharata senayorum hayor matye vishidantamidam vachaha. To him who was despondent in the midst of the two armies, Rishikesha, as if smiling, O Bharata, spoke these words.
So now we're going to have in the next verse the beginning of the teaching. It happens in chapter 2, verse 11. Now, let's again review some of the literary techniques that are used in our scriptures. Frequently, the totality of the teaching is set forth in the first idea that's presented. So, for example, when we started Viveka Chudamani on the Monday night class, in the salutation verse is the totality of the teaching, the very first verse. You really need nothing else if you can get it. The rest of the book is for those of us who need a little bit of remediation. So I tell you, chapter 2, verse 11 has the totality of the teaching. It's very deep, so we're going to spend some time on it. Number 11, please.
Sri Bhagavanu Vacha Asyo Ichana Navansho Yaschastvam Pragyavadasya Bhashase Gatasu Nagatam Sucha Sushva Nanasochanti Panditaha. The Blessed Lord said, "You have grieved for those that should not be grieved for, yet you speak words of wisdom. The wise grieve neither for the living nor for the dead."
So, what is grieving here? On a surface or exoteric level, well, I grieve when my loved ones die. Are you saying I shouldn't grieve when my loved ones die? Well, it has a deeper meaning. We also grieve the loss of the things we love and want. I get a brand new car, and then I get ready to drive it home from work, and I go outside and someone's keyed the door. I grieve the loss of my brand new car's paint job. I grieve the loss of a job. I grieve the loss that my political candidate doesn't win. I grieve the loss that the Supreme Court justice I love dies. I grieve the loss of ethnic communities that give way to gentrification. I grieve the loss of secular government in India that's now religious. Whatever it is, the world changes. Everything in the world of name and form changes. So what happens to us is a phenomenon that we call anyonya adhyas. Anyonya adhyas means mutual superimposition. It means I superimpose upon myself the qualities of the not self, and I superimpose upon the world of name and form the qualities of the self. Myself is birthless, changeless, deathless, nirupaham, without a form, nirgunaihi, without qualities, nirmalam, without taint or dirt, kutusta, absolutely still, like an anvil or a mountain. But I think I change. I superimpose upon myself the qualities of the body and the mind and the intellect. But that's only half the superimposition onto a world of name and form, which in the end we're going to see is nothing but mithya, illusion, vaitatya, falseness, pratibimba, reflection like a mirror. But we don't even need to go there yet. What we can see is the fundamental impermanence of everything. I want the world and the situations and the people in it to be permanent. Now, one of the things I say to young people, do you want a really good-looking partner, husband or wife, or do you want a long-term relationship? Well, I want both. Well, you can't have both. Because if you're 25 years old and you have a really good-looking spouse, I promise you, in 60 years, they're going to be old, saggy, and wrinkly. So you have a choice. Long-term relationship or good-looking spouse. You can't have both. I say to everyone, all relationships end in death or divorce. What? Think. The good news is if you both get hit by a bus at the same time. All relationships end. All of them in death or divorce. All jobs will end. All political situations will end. All your heroes will end. Swamiji used to say, graveyards are filled with indispensable people. And your beauty will end. Your sharp mind will end. Your eyesight will end. Your teeth will end. All of it. That's the way of the world. And yet we superimpose permanence and then get terribly upset when we see that that's an illusion. So this is our problem. The technical term again is anyonya adhyas, mutual superimposition. I superimpose upon the self the qualities of the not self. And I superimpose upon the not self the qualities of the self. As the result of this, I'm constantly suffering from loss. And my inability to see this then brings me fear. Bhaya. No! We can't let go. We hang on. We clutch. Another slogan I like, if you don't let go, you're going to be dragged. God knows how many times have we done that in life. Over and over and over again. And at the deepest level, Krishna is going to show us that in reality, nobody dies. Because the self in you and the self in me is birthless, changeless, and deathless. The easiest way to get a grasp of this is to go to the dream state. Ultimately, what Vedanta says is you are the God of your dream. Your dream comes about through imagination. All this is no different. This is the Lord's dream. When you wake up, do you mourn the dream of mourn the loss of your dream body or the dream characters in your dream? No. If it was a pleasant dream, you might say, oh, that was such a wonderful dream. Too bad, just imagination. You let it go. Or if it was a nightmare, you wake up and you go, oh, thank God. It was so vivid. It was just a nightmare. It's gone. You, the waker, transcend your dream. You, the Atman, transcend all the changes of this world. Now, he says, you grieve for whom you should not grieve, though you speak words of wisdom. So all the things Arjuna has said from the ego viewpoint are true. So when we're doing transaction in the world, and the technical term is vyavahara, doing business, transactions in the world, yes. Should you try to get a different job if you can that pays better? Of course, why not? But we sport with it. It's all leela, like actors in a play. Now, the thing to understand, we do not give this teaching to people whose minds are not prepared. So, for example, if you have a friend whose mother dies, you don't say, oh, you grieve for whom you should not grieve, though you speak words of wisdom. The wise grieve neither for the living or the dead. That's heartless, because their minds are not prepared for the truth. What do? You act your part in the drama of life. You display sympathy. Oh, I'm so sorry. Is there anything I can do? But for us yogis, Krishna is giving us a deeper teaching. Now, here Krishna is going to spend some time in the next few verses talking about, how are we doing on time? Spiritual anthropology. And I think we're going to have to wait to get into that next week. So even though all the things that Arjuna said about war and ritual and honoring ancestors, etc., is intelligent, it's wise from a worldly standpoint. From a spiritual standpoint, Krishna is saying, basically, I'm going to have to enlighten him right here on the battlefield. So he's going to explain to Arjuna why he shouldn't grieve. The wise grieve neither for the living nor the dead. Here, what we mean by the living, all the situations in life that we have. Your job, your family, your children, your parents, the politics, the economy, all of it is all temporary. It's all going to change. But what Krishna is going to show us is there's something in us, an eternal factor that's never, ever touched by it. And when he says we grieve neither for the living or the dead, that's going into the past. Oh, if only I had done blah, 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 blah. Oh, I miss my old job. Oh, if only I had done better in that relationship, I could have saved it. All those things from the past. All of that is pointless. And we're going to find out why. So the main point that he's saying here, Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. All this phenomenal world is nothing but Brahman. It's the great Mahavakya from the Chandogya Upanishad. It's all God. It's all good. It's all going to work out. Yeah, but Jim, what about global warming? And what about fires? And what about the politics? And COVID? What about it? Do what you can. Do your duty. Remember, I'm not saying sit down at the bottom of the chariot and not fight. But I tell you, it's all going to be okay. It's all going to work out. Be at peace. God's in charge. And I don't have to understand. First of all, I can't. But I can intuitively know that the self in me is birthless, changeless, and deathless. And that's the truth of everyone. And this phenomenal world is like a hologram. Seen, but not real. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Brahman is real. It's true. The phenomenal world, Jagat. We call it Jagat because it goes Jagat, 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 just always changing. Is Mithya, illusion, superimposition, Adhyas. Images in a mirror, Pratibimba. So that's the totality of the teaching for those whose minds are subtle enough to grasp it. Luckily for the rest of us, there's 17 and a half more chapters. We'll end here and we have time for questions.
I have a question.
Who is it?
This is Cecily. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so you talking about the cheating husband and the drug addict child. You said it's pointless, but in a way, it's a catalyst for seeking relief on instead of relief / like self-realization, basically, like
I'm having a hard time understanding you, dear. Speak a little louder.
Okay.
Say again. Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
It was better before. I can't hear you now hardly at all.
Oh my God, how about now? Is it better?
Yes.
No?
Just a little slower and clearer.
Okay, so you were giving an example earlier about the cheating husband and the drug addict child or family member. And you were just recently just say, well, it's just pointless to be, trying to fix that. But in a way, it's not pointless. I'm thinking it's a catalyst.
Did I say pointless to try to fix it?
I don't know, just a second ago. Well, that's what I understood. I'm sorry if I
think you did. I gave no solutions. I gave no solutions. I said they're just examples of our modern day struggles.
Yeah. But in a way, I think, such an event is a catalyst for growth, right? Like like knowing that there's no solution, you surrender, and because it's not easy to surrender, you do tapas, or you do everything you can to quiet your mind and be silent and find out that everything is an illusion, and it just doesn't matter whether it's happening or not, but you eventually will see the double superimposition, and eventually you will let it go, or you don't even have to let go. You just merge into realization that this world is not real. Is that what you said?
What I was implying is we all have these kurukshetras in our lives. And for now, I've given no solutions to them. But what I said...
But to surrender.
First thing we do is surrender to the teaching and the teacher. That's what Arjuna did. He surrendered to Lord Krishna.
Mm-hmm.
Now, just like Arjuna, in a sense, didn't choose this battle, in a way it was thrust upon him. So you and I frequently don't get to choose what our battles are.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is, from the highest viewpoint, is I tend to want to see it from the viewpoint of my ego.
Mm-hmm.
And what Krishna is going to tell us, he hasn't given us the solution yet, is we need to see it all from a different viewpoint.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Thank you, Tim.
I didn't give any instructions on how to do it yet.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right.
Hi, Jen. Hi, Jen.
Who's this?
This is Vikas. A quick question, please. So is dharma at the level of the ego?
Well, see if you can figure that out. If the self is without action, if it's just the space of consciousness itself. First of all, what do you mean by dharma? Because that's a very rich word.
So let me maybe ask slightly differently. If Arjuna was a yogi, then Krishna wouldn't be goading him to pick up the arms and fight. Is that right?
Well, I'm not that he's not a yogi, because every one of these chapters is the yoga of. But if he were a sannyasi or a Brahmin whose swadharma was to be a scholar, to be a priest, he probably wouldn't have. First of all, Arjuna wouldn't have been in that particular situation. And that doesn't mean Brahmins don't fight. We have the story of Parashurama, whose parents were killed, so he's decided he's going to kill all the Kshatriyas. And then Ram comes along and he whoops his butt. Gets humiliated. So we have instances of Brahmins who fight. But by and large, that's his job, that's his duty. So what do you do for a living?
I'm a software engineer.
Yeah. Do you like it?
Actually, yes.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. Do you have a family?
I do.
Do you like having a family?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So for you to have the idea that, oh, I need to become a Swami, I need to leave my family, give up software engineering, and walk around Rishikesh with a begging bowl, probably is not what the Lord has cut out for you.
Right.
Now, if, for example, you have a wife and kids,
Wife,
wife, how long have you been married?
20 plus years.
Okay, you ever had a fight with her?
Not lately.
That's a very unusual marriage. I can't tell you how many wives with whom I've spoken, and I say, have you ever thought of divorce? No. Murder? Yes. But see, what would be adharmic for someone who's a householder would be to have a fight with your spouse and you think your solution is to get a divorce. Now, sometimes for some marriages, they never should have gotten together in the first place. They're not compatible, or one of the spouses is abusive. But by and large, the dharma, the duty of a husband and wife is when they have conflict to work it out. My brother and sister-in-law just celebrated 51 years of marriage. It's not been easy. They're both difficult people. They've worked very hard, and today they're very good friends. They enjoy each other's company. But does that make it a little clearer, this idea of where the dharma is? So it doesn't mean everybody has to be a soldier. It means wherever you are in your life is just fine, unless you chafe at it because you're in the wrong place. If what you're doing is adharmic for you, you're there for all the wrong reasons, usually from what the psychologists would call superego. You've gone into a profession because your parents or teachers or family has said, this is what you have to do. This is what our people do. And that's not really what you want to do. Does that make it a little clearer?
Yes, Jim.
Now, dharma is a function of the equipment, not the self.
Right.
If we define dharma in that sense. So the dharma of the body is karma. The dharma of yourself is self-knowledge. So whatever actions your body engages in, that ultimately its cause is the force of the past. But yourself is outside of that whole picture. Any other questions?
So does the, if I don't know if it's the right word, but the sense of dharma, does it start to change or diminish as maybe the hold of the ego starts to diminish as well?
Well, yes, and in a classic family, you know, if you follow the 4 ashramas, you know, you start out in your brahmachari days, meaning you're a student.
Right.
And, you know, everybody pushes you around and you say, yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am, and do what you're told, which you chafe at. And then finally, you leave college, you get a wife, and you become a grahasta. Then your dharma is householder, make money, have a profession, be successful, get the house, have the kids. Then you start to really suffer as you put your kids through school. And then when your parents get to be about 60, 65, maybe 70, they retire and they say, okay, now you take care of us. They've hit vanaprastha. So you get semi-retirement. Then you may start your spiritual inquiry. It's funny, as you get older, you quit acquiring things and you start giving stuff away. You give it to your kids and your grandkids. Oh, I have too much stuff. And then the last, of course, is sannyas. Okay, I'm leaving the world, and what I'm interested in now is God and God alone. Now, you can take sannyas at any station of life. But that's the natural course of life. Now, we in America, and now in modern India, there's not nearly the same kind of social stratification. This whole idea of a jati, I'm born into a particular stratum, a particular profession. My father did this, therefore I have to do it. It's not that way anymore. And you may find that you want to do a career change. My friend Vivek, who used to come and chant the shlokas, for years he was an architect. And he found that it was no longer feeding him. I don't mean physically, just there was no juice left in it anymore. So, you know, in his 40s, he did a career change. He's now a practicing psychotherapist. He's also teaching architectural design, something he didn't think he would be doing. But he's not sitting at a drafting table at an architecture firm, you know, designing bathrooms anymore, which he found really not fulfilling. So that can happen. We can change our particular direction in life. Happens in the US frequently. People will change. But you'll know when it's time to make a change. What we want to do with young people is give them the idea you can do and be anything you wish. And we want to give them opportunities to explore their strengths and explore their interests. Rather than saying, oh, you should become an accountant because it's safe and you'll make a lot of money. Wrong reason to do stuff. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thanks, Jim.
Any others? All right, let's sit.